Ooh.
We're living on a disk, floating through space, with a tiny sun.
Hey, I'm FTFE. Welcome back to the channel that does to stupidity what happens when you give somebody a brand new pair of concrete shoes. Thank you very much for joining once again for your favourite kind of thing, a flat earth debate. You've seen a lot on this channel, some very shouty, some more sciencey and actual, a decent conversation. And hopefully tonight we're going to get a decent conversation. My guest tonight is someone that you may have seen debate in MC Toon a few months ago. They were discussing gravity, and we're going to be talking about the same kind of things today, the flat earth and in general, and some gravity, and it hopefully should be a decent conversation. I'm going to let the guy introduce himself. Wendell, would you like to take 2 minutes to just say hello, introduce yourself, and state your position on the shape of the earth?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Wendell Varner, and my position on the shape of the earth is that it's pretty much a duality. I don't discredit the actual science. I'm not part of the flat earth community, but I do agree with the flat earthers on many of their subjects, and I feel like it's a disconnect between most people. And, a lot of the globe earthers think that they know things that they don't know, as well as the flat earthers. So I'm just here to present my position on the duality of them all.
Awesome. That sounds nice and interesting, but if you were, gunned to your head and asked what shape the earth is, what would you say?
Well, it would depend. That answer would have to be a very scientific answer, because from the perspective of me as a human and my size in relation to the universe, the earth is always going to be flat. No matter what I do, as far as me being a biological human, the earth will always appear flat to me. Now, we know that the systems and the sciences, the seasons, things like that, don't work too well on a flat earth. So a mathematical construct was created to account for all of these things, even though we as humans may not be able to visually see those things and identify those things. But if you had to ask me what shape the earth was, from my standpoint, the earth is as flat as it can be.
Okay.
I will never experience the curvature of the earth.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so the way it's going to work today is I've asked Wendell you can have up to 15 minutes to present 3 kind of points about Earth, the shape of the Earth and gravity, and why it's not as the heliocentric model says. And then we're going to have half an hour, 45 minutes back and forth about what he's presented before I give some evidence for what, the shape of the Earth being a globe and gravity being as it's described. And let's just get on with it. So Wendell, over to you. You can have up to 15 minutes to present whatever you like. regarding the shape of the Earth and gravity, and we'll go from there. So over to you.
All right. So first of all, to get started, we got to start with the beginning of things, and everybody has to have we have to be on the same page when it comes down to our definitions. So how you define space and how I define space may be a little bit different. I define space as everything. The Earth is within space, and space is flat and it's infinite. All right. From that standpoint, we have to go back to the very beginning. Where did space come from? In order to understand that, then we go to the standard model of particle physics. I like to start my conversations off with particle physics because that would be the origin of your gravity. All right. So we got strong forces, weak forces, electromagnetism, and gravity. Now, at some point, all of these forces had to be one if the Big Bang was true. All right. We know that gravity does not tie into the standard model. So you can fill a room with 100 scientists from MIT and Stanford and the biggest colleges, and all I'm going to disagree on what gravity actually is. Everything that we see in space is actually straight, it's not curved. Light only travels straight. The only reason we see light curve is through a process called gravitational lensing. So the relationship between mass and gravity has to have the origin within the Big Bang, which no scientist at this point can define. The closest thing we can get to it is the string theory. All right, and the string theory kind of tries to tie in all of this, but the string theory also adds in a theoretical particle called a graviton, which would mean you would also have to have an anti-graviton because it's supersymmetry. For each pair of elementary particles, you would have to have the opposite. All right. So we got questions in the flat Earth community, I would say, that cannot be answered. And from our perspective, you have to have a PhD in order to prove that the Earth is a globe. If a person does not have a PhD, they cannot effectively prove the Earth is a globe, because visually, what we observe as humans is the Earth being flat and endless, and that what goes up must come down. The space that we live in is one continuous space. Even though Earth is contained within this space, it is one continuous infinite space. A human being will never experience the curvature of the Earth without some form of technology. And a lot of globe earthers like to bring up the fact of math. So they'll say, well, why is the downward acceleration 9.8 meters per second? It's because they're not taking into account that this also can happen using a flat Earth without your gravity. Anything that is denser than the medium it's in will fall. That's going to always be a true statement. Anything that is denser than the medium that it's in will fall. So when we take something and we put it in a vacuum, in essence, we're taking away that medium. So the ratio of the density to the medium that it's in will always be almost infinite. So they're going to drop and they're going to accelerate at the same rate, because at that point, they have the same type of structure. There's no resistance to that structure, if that makes any sense. Because in that vacuum, there's no atmosphere, there is no density. So we know that also can work on a flat Earth. Another problem that I have is the globe definition of gravity. A lot of people still use Newtonian gravity. Trust me, I'm not an idiot. I understand that the gravitational constant works in a lot of systems, but it also fails in a lot of systems. You cannot accurately project the orbits of every planet using Newton's system. It does not work. If you try to mathematically do it on your own, you can look at these numbers and try to plug them in. It does not work. What you have to do is break it down into pretty much a two-body system in order to make these orbits work. All right, so that's a problem that flat earthers have, and it's a problem that most people without a PhD cannot accurately describe. Einstein came along and he changed Newton's idea of gravity. People don't understand that during the time of Newton, ether was still a big thing. All right, in order to make some of these things work, we had to have ether in the equation. Now, and I understand also that Isaac Newton was one of the first guys that was against ether. So he tried to create these equations without ether. He couldn't get them to work properly, so he ended up adding ether back in. Einstein came along and was smart enough to make these equations work by removing the ether. But then years later, we still come up with things to replace it that's very similar to ether that globe earthers don't want to make the correlation to, such as dark energy and dark matter. All right, so we took away the ether, but then we came up with dark matter. We had to come up with something that applied mass to the universe to account for the orbits and the motions of the planets and the stars. All right, so there's a lot of fallacies with the globe model, and nobody has came up with an exact working model for the universe yet. It's still a work in progress. Maybe they'll do it in the future, but I don't think that a graviton exists. I could be wrong, but for me, I would have to go with Einstein's theory of general relativity, which would state that mass curves space, all right? And that simply that gravity would be the curvature of space-time, all right? Any map, another evidence that we have for the flat earth is any map that we draw for us humans is going to be flat. If I draw a map from where I'm at in Charleston, South Carolina to California, over 2,000 miles, I can represent that on a flat drawing. So in essence, though, we do have a map of the flat earth. It's every map that you look at every day. Nobody's going to take out a globe to travel across the country or across the continent. All right, so like I said, that's just a couple of things that I feel like why flat earthers are right in a lot of aspects. Now, and I do agree that your math is correct, but sometimes your math doesn't accurately represent reality. And there's a point where you have to say, hey, flat earther, you're right on this. We do not yet notice our theory of the earth being a sphere is based on mathematics. We will never, ever see the earth move. So that's when we go to class and we hear our teacher say, well, the earth rotates at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. We say, well, hell, well, why don't you go out to space and turn it around and let us see the earth spinning? And then they say, well, it's relative. So the spaceships is moving at a way that we will never be able to see the earth turn. Well, that provides a problem because it's something that we will never be able to observe, even though it works out mathematically. Gravitational waves, they had that, I think it's called the LIGO's project, where they shot the lights, the lasers through that L-shaped thing and make the lasers come back, and then it puts an image on the wall. And then they said, well, that one of those arms was shortened because of a gravitational wave. Well, using relativity, you would have to say that because the space was shrunk due to the gravitational wave, then time would also have had to slow down, and they still would have met that point at the same time, because the rate of the space contracting would also directly relate to time, because the space and time at the same time, they move in one direction. So there's a lot of fallacies with the globe Earth theory, and I feel like when I see flat earthers on Facebook or whatever, they get bullied a lot, but in all actuality, they're accurate for what their minds can handle, or for what our minds can handle. I don't separate myself from that type of deal. I know that an airplane, if it flies straight and never adjusts its altitude, would fly straight into outer space. I mean, and there's not too much explanations for these kind of stuff. So you're welcome to rebuttal anything that I had to say or anything that may have been wrong to you.
I mean, if you're happy for just going to a back and forth, there's quite a lot we can cover there.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I didn't have a structure for it, so I go off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm just writing some notes. 1 sec.
Yep. I mean, like I said, we can also talk. You can also hit on that zero G and weightlessness. Like I said, that free fall of 9.8 meters per second can easily be described as a density ratio. There's no density of atmosphere within a vacuum, so in essence, a density of 1 gram would be almost infinite.
All right. Well,
there's nothing to.
Let's start with your assertion of the everything that we say about gravity can be described using density, and it simply falls because of the being more dense than the medium that it's in. Just why the preferred direction though? Why down?
because at the inception of the universe, when space was created, it was created with these cardinal dimensions, which is your up, down, your
that's a
left,
large
right,
claim.
and your depth.
That's a large claim that there's a cardinal direction in the universe. Do you have anything to
Right.
support that?
No, sir. No, it wouldn't be any evidence to support that. It's just like asking for evidence of the Big Bang.
There's plenty of evidence of the Big Bang.
Give me one.
Have you ever turned
How
your
can we
TV on and
prove
seen
it?
the static? That's literally radiation from the Big Bang.
Cosmic radiation, right?
Yeah, the
But how do we?
microwave.
How do we?
Well, because we can mathematically model the expansion of the universe backwards to a point where that would have come from. And that's all to do with something called the recombination event, which is, there is so much evidence to suggest that that's what it is, because we made predictions on models and then looked for things that those predictions would show, like the cosmic microwave background radiation, and found them. But there is no evidence that there's a cardinal direction. There simply isn't. That's kind of just going, well, it is because it is. And that's the thing with gravity in the globe model, in the heliocentric model, whatever you want to call it. There's a reason why there's a down. There's a reason why, if I take a cylinder of compressed air and put it on the ground, that cylinder within it, even though it's compressed, will have a gradient of pressure, lower at the bottom, higher at the bottom and lower at the top. And then if I turn that cylinder upside down, that gradient changes direction as well, even though it's got no relation to the outside world or anything, because it's in a compressed container. The gradient will always be from higher to lower. And there's a reason for that. It's not just there's a cardinal direction, but that is the prediction of gravity, that would happen, that there would be the acceleration downwards causing that gradient. And to just say, oh, well, that's a cardinal direction without any reason why is a little bit of a cop-out, and it is one of the definitions of pseudoscience, because it's not something that could ever be tested.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. It's a claim that cannot be tested, but it's a claim that logically makes sense. Now, when it comes down to the why of everything, science can't understand the why of everything. We can rewind time and get that CMB, all that cosmic microwave radiation, but we don't know where that origin came from. So we don't have an origin of mass. We don't have an origin of energy.
Oh, we have an origin of mass. Mass came from the energy of the universe, and that's been demonstrated. Obviously, Einstein's E = mc squared has been demonstrated to be true, in the sense that they have literally turned energy into atoms with mass in a laboratory to show that is a progression that happens. Energy can become mass, and vice versa. So we know the origin of mass. The origin of mass is actually also around the recombination event, the point in the universe's expansion where it was cool enough for electrons and other subatomic particles to be able to bind. So we know the origin of mass. I will give you that we don't know the origin of energy. All that we do know is that all of the energy that exists in the universe today, be it in a form of matter or not, was there at the beginning of the universe, at the point of the Big Bang.
Law of conservation of energy. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. The first law of thermodynamics. So a lot of flat earthers, I'm not accusing you of this, obviously, but a lot of flat earthers try with the argument of, the Big Bang was impossible because you can't create something from nothing. And that's not how it works. Everything that's here now was there at the Big Bang, just in a infinitesimally small singularity. So, and we don't know what happened before that, right? I would never say that I could prove there's not a God, right? Because I don't know if God didn't start the Big Bang. I know for damn sure that the Big Bang, the point of expansion, was a thing, because all the evidence suggests it when you model it backwards. But who knows what caused that? But that's not really the question that we're trying to answer. The fact that the Big Bang happened and the universe exists, it's not, here or there. That's happened and we're here. If we need to talk about the reasons why things happen, why gravity does what it does, then we need to talk about the reasons. No one exactly knows what gravity is, right? There's the famous quote of Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, "We don't know what gravity is," and he's right. We don't exactly know what it is, but that doesn't mean that we can't verify that it exists and give it a cause-effect relationship using science, which is what's been done. and obviously there's lots of experiments to show that gravity is a real thing, and gives us the predictive capabilities, be it in a Newtonian sense or in an Einsteinian sense. I mean, Newtonian gravity calculations are still used every day. Every satellite that's put into orbit, every rocket that goes up, that's all calculated using Newtonian gravity. You can stop me whenever you want.
I mean, like I said, your math is always going to be correct because you guys have created a mathematical construct that which we cannot totally prove. Just like you just said, I can't prove that that up and down are cardinal directions. I mean, which you're 100% true, and what you can't prove to me the origin of gravity. That's something that we're still debating. We know that it exists. Yeah. We know that there's something that exists that makes us go towards the bottom. All right, but we don't know that if a graviton exists, and then if a graviton does exist, another problem that proposes is the anti-gravitron.
A graviton, even though it can be theoretically described as a particle within particle physics, it's not necessarily a particle. It's a relationship of the spin of bosons that would be the transfer vector for the gravity propagating from one point to the other.
They have to be a cause for all force carriers. So if we talk about a gluon, then we know that it's a certain force carrier or photon. Or
that's the thing with particle physics. Right, you said that gravity doesn't fit into the standard model of particle physics, and you're right.
It does not.
The simple reason for that is it's not necessary in particle physics.
But it can be. You had a guy that named Witten that created that. Well, he kind of made adjustments to the string theory and created that M theory. So within this M theory, we know that
M theory is pretty dead. But,
it could be pretty. All theories in science eventually die because it's like we cannot find the actual origin of the universe. And getting back on topic about the flat Earth, as deep as a conversation if we have spun off to, the normal human is not going to understand half of the things. They're not going to understand the spins of electrons and these things and that. If you have to go to that point to prove that the Earth is a globe, then you have to sit back and say, well, for most humans, the Earth is flat and it's motionless.
But we don't need to go. We don't need to go there. We can go a lot simpler. Basic observations that you can do on Earth to show that the Earth is curved. When you do observations using equipment that surveyors would use, there's a guy called Jesse Wazowski who literally over a lake of like 1 mile measured the curve of the Earth, matching the predictions that we have. So you can do things at sea level that are pretty simple, and then you can do things like what Mr. Sensible did, a good friend of mine, who sent a weather balloon up with a non-fisheye lens to have a look to see if they could capture the curve of the Earth, and they did at the predicted height, saw the predicted curve that they were expected to see.
And at what height was that? 60 miles?
36,000 feet, I believe.
All right, so yeah, I mean,
36 kilometers. Sorry, 36 kilometers. Yeah, 36 kilometers, right? And that was it's a weather balloon. It cost like less than £1,000 to do, I think. So it's not out of the realms of people doing. And it confirmed what we thought, that there would be at that height, you'd be able to see the predicted curve. And yeah, not everyone's going to be able to do that, but it only takes a few to get together to get £1,000 and go and prove it yourself.
Right.
To show that the Earth is curved is a pretty simple thing. Obviously, for most humans, because we are so small compared to the Earth, our everyday observations, just looking around with our eyes, won't necessarily be able to tell us if the Earth is curved or not, especially if you're away from the ocean. But as a sailor, as someone who spent a lot of time at sea, being at sea and looking at the horizon, it was very clear that the Earth was curved. Watching things disappear as you went away, watching the stars reduce every 6-9 miles by 1 degree, as would be predicted if the Earth was a globe. All the basic observations like that, to me, always confirmed that the Earth was a globe. And I didn't need complicated science or anything to do that. That was, it certainly looks like we're on a globe,
A person like Ptolemy, 1,500 years ago, made these same type of mathematical assumptions using the geocentric model, we know that a lot of things that go over the horizon don't actually go over the horizon. All we got to do is pull up our camera and we can zoom back in, or pull up your binoculars and you can focus in on that. Now, the way that humans see in perspective, if I take a flat track, totally as flat as it can be, let's say a racetrack, and I set a camera up 3 inches up off of the ground and told you to walk away from that camera, you would disappear from the feet first, because the way perspective works, the ground moves up and the sky moves down. When you pull that camera back out, that object comes back into view. You talked about the guy who did the experiment on a lake, over that 1 mile lake, and the drop was expected what it should have been. I've seen people do quite the contrary. I've seen people, now I don't know how accurate these experiments are. I didn't do them myself. I'm a person that doesn't believe everything that I see. It has to make sense to me. But I've seen a guy with a drone do the same type of experiment and show where there was absolutely no curve. I've seen the pictures of the Chicago skyline from Canada, from across the Great Lakes. And I don't believe that that is a simple mirage. There's certain things that's unexplainable to the normal human. And most normal humans, 98, 97% of us, will never, ever take a weather balloon up that high to see it. Most people don't care. It doesn't affect their jobs every day. You know,
but if you really want to prove it to yourself, it's quite simple to do. Now, I'd like to just quickly show you a video which kind of disproves your notion of you can bring things back in by zooming in on them. This is a guy called Dazzler the cameraman, and this is in Australia. He's actually using a P1000 here. Let me get and if you look, you can see that there's some ships on the horizon here. You got 1, 2, and 3 over here. He zooms in. You can see you got 1, 2, and there's a third one just over the horizon there. And he's testing the claim of you can zoom something back in, right? So what he does, let's speed it up a bit. What he does is he zooms in a bit to get a more in frame. All right. So at this point, when he's partially zoomed in, he screenshots and shows the bit of the ship that looks like it's just over the horizon. So if the claim of being able to zoom something back in, zoom something in and bring it back over the horizon is true, he should be able to at this point zoom in and bring part of that back up. So what he does is he zooms in more. It is a video. He's just like frozen it as he's talking. So he zooms in more and takes another screenshot, and then compares the screenshot from when he was zoomed out to the screenshot of when he's zoomed in. Same camera, and as you can see, the act of zooming in changed nothing. None of that ship that is clearly over the horizon came back above the horizon by zooming in. And no matter how much you zoom in, it does not bring that back over the horizon. So that will not. And so that kind of disproves what you were saying about perspective. That you would. So if you can leave this screenshot up right here. Yes, certainly.
I want your viewers to pay attention to one thing that always caught my eye, even since I was a child. Is something very simple. Look at the height of the water. All right. We know that the bottom of this screen is the same level as the middle of the screen set that we see at the horizon. That they are level. Do you agree?
Yes.
So with that being said, the further you go out, the higher that ground is going to go. It's going to be impossible for that camera to get over that because of human perspective, the way our eyes work. If you look down a long hallway, this is the same type of effect that you are going to get. And when, like I told you, we walked on a football field. It's an experiment that I've done myself.
Football fields are curved, though. You do know football fields are curved, right? They have to be for drainage.
It's a track. I'm sorry, it's a running track. It's around a football field. But it's
even running tracks are curved. They have to be for drainage as well. I've done a lot of track in my time.
Well, I didn't measure the floor.
But perspective doesn't make things disappear bottom up for no reason. What this is showing is that there's a physical obstruction that as it went away, that's what happened. And if it was just a case of perspective, then zooming in actually increasing the amount of optics that you're focusing on that point would allow you to see more. That's what would happen if it was simply perspective.
Well, it would be beyond the field of view, because the ground at that point is obstructing what's behind it. The ground in this instance being the water. So it's going to obstruct what's
Why would
behind
it obstruct it if it's flat?
Because the way perspective works, it goes up. So example, if you stand under a power line and you walk away from that power, you stand under it at a right angle and you walk away from that power line, the angle is going to consistently decrease. And that's just the way perspective works. The angle is going to always be that sky is going to come down to meet the horizon at that vanishing point. All right. And being the fact that this is water, you cannot see behind that vanishing point. It's not a solid object, it's liquid. All right.
But
and
when you're talking about perspective,
if it was going to curve away, so listen at me now. If this one can curve away, I wish if it was turned the other way, if it was going away from us, going over a curve, we should be able to visually see it going over a curve. That item would no longer be level. That ship is still extremely level with the horizon. That's not tilted away from the horizon.
Right. Okay. And right. Well, first off, about the tilting, what you're seeing there is probably 1/5 of a degree, if that. There's no way you're going to be able to see a tilt of 1/5 of a degree. So
1 degree for every 69 miles. I get that.
So you're not going to see that. You're not going to see a tilt there. That's not something we would expect to see. You literally can't see that with the naked eye. But what you're saying about perspective and the fact that it would disappear behind the horizon line is wrong, because parallel lines don't intersect. So anything say you're looking down this long hallway, like you're saying, right? And anything above your eye line comes down to you, comes down, and anything below your eye line comes up. But at that point in the middle, there's never going to be a point where they cross. So if something is above that eye line, at no point would it drop below that eye line. It would shrink in totality, all right? You would never get an occasion where you have part of it hidden. That is just not something that would happen because of the simple fact that parallel lines don't intersect. That ship that is hidden by the horizon there, that wouldn't happen. What you would see is the ship would shrink in totality. You would be able to see the entire ship, but it would get smaller and smaller and smaller. There's no reason it would drop below that line due to the main fact that parallel lines just don't intersect. It's not how perspective works. There has to be an obstruction for you to only see part of what you're looking at.
I agree 100%. But like I said, this is an experiment that's done over water, and the water is going to cause some type of obstruction, whether it be atmospheric obstructions, because we know that water is evaporating. There's all kind of atmospheric interference going on at that point.
You're talking about refraction, right?
And like I said, yeah, but not refraction to the point that would cause a perfect mirage. And like I said, if you look at the bottom, I do agree with you. Parallel lines will not intersect. But at the point that ship reaches that vanishing point, you will no longer be able to see that whole ship. I'm sorry, there's nothing the only thing that you can do at that point to see the whole ship would be raise your height so that you can get a clearer view down.
Yeah,
and at
okay,
that point,
and that's another thing,
not
right?
See the curve.
Raising your height to be able to see more is an expected prediction of the globe. But that's not something that would happen if the Earth was flat. Raising your height would not increase the amount you can see.
Raising your height would always
not if the Earth was flat. If the Earth was flat, you would always be able to see all of it. Raising your height would just increase the angle that you can see it at. You wouldn't increase the amount you can see. That only happens because increasing your height on the globe allows you to see further over the obstruction. The things that you're saying are sort of things that wouldn't happen if the Earth were flat.
I mean, dude, I understand. That's why I said, to me, it's a duality. But I gotta disagree with you. It's going to be a point where humans cannot see. I mean, one of the dumbest assertions that I get from the globers is that, well, if the Earth is flat, we should be able to see from here to California. No, dude, it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of different things that's going to obstruct your view between here and the next 100 feet in front of you, let alone 3 miles in front of you.
At sea level, granted.
There's a lot of gases that the Earth has, very dense gases. We just talked about this this gradient, this pressure gradient, and how thick the gases of Earth are towards the bottom of Earth. So you will never be able to see infinitely through these gases. That's a very crazy.
Granted, and that's something I've agreed with flat earthers. You know, at sea level, you know, you shouldn't be able to see infinitely because there is refraction and atmospheric distortion and stuff. However, if you went up in an airplane at 20,000, 25,000 feet, there would be nothing stopping a massive, powerful telescope on top of that airplane seeing to the other end of the Earth. And that
seeing to the other end of the Earth. See, to me, the Earth would appear infinite to a human, even with a telescope. Not unless we got some super powerful telescope that
we do have pretty damn we do have pretty damn powerful telescopes that would be able to see from one side of the Earth to the other if you went up high enough to avoid atmospheric distortion and refraction. So you know, and those are things that, you know, there has been planes taking photos up there with extremely decent cameras and you don't see forever. There's still a defined horizon and obstruction and things that come into view the further you go, which is predictions of the globe and not of the Earth being flat. And it's not just the fact that we can quite clearly observe that the curvature's there using surveying equipment, you know, using, you know, weather balloons and that. We can also quite easily measure that the Earth is rotating in 3 axes, which is something that could only happen if it was a globe.
How can we measure that?
Well, you could always ask Bob Nadell. He's done it pretty nicely. You know that one, right?
Could you explain to me though? No.
Here we go.
No, like I said, I do this straight for fun, just being an intellectual nerd. I don't really.
This is famous flat earther Bob Nadell. Just have a listen to this.
If the Earth is spinning at one rotation every 24 hours, that means that every hour it has to turn 15 degrees. And if the gyroscope is mounted anywhere on Earth, it's going to drift. In today's 21st century navigation systems, they're using what's called a ring laser gyroscope. It is extremely precise. If we could simply get one of these ring laser gyroscopes, we would be able to prove once and for all that there is no rotation to the Earth. One of the people in the community actually purchased one for $20,000. But what we found is when we turned on that gyroscope, we found that we were picking up a drift, a 15 degree per hour drift.
Now, to clarify, what he picked up was a drift of 15.04 degrees per hour, which matches a sidereal day of 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.9 seconds. And the drift that he picked up was not just like in 2 dimensions, but in 3 dimensions, which is something that would be happening if you were on a sphere. So he picked up the raw, the pitch, and the yaw all at 15.04 degrees per hour, which matches exactly what is the predictions of, you know, our Earth. And what he used there, a ring laser gyroscope, is something that is on every single modern plane in the world. And when you turn on these planes, they have to use the gyroscopes to actually measure the position on Earth to match up with the navigation systems. And that's, again, all based on the Earth being a globe and understanding the, you know, the rotational velocities and how they would affect a gyroscope. So it's not just that we can see the curve, which, you know, a lot of people can argue against because, you know, there's contention with understanding how a lot of the things work. But then we can also correlate that to the fact that we can quite easily measure the rotation of the Earth, which again matches what, you know, what we're told it is. And that's not the only way to test it. There's many ways to test that the Earth rotates, and it always matches the prediction that we're supposed to get.
Well, Sagnac, Michelson, Morley, they couldn't detect the motion. And when I saw that gyroscope, the
kind
first
of
thing that
incorrect.
came to my mind, they got a no example from the experiment. They couldn't detect anything.
Mux and Morley weren't trying to measure
ether.
Yeah, they weren't trying to measure the rotation of the Earth. Yeah, they weren't trying to measure the rotation of the Earth. They did the experiment knowing that the Earth rotated. So there was no way that their equipment could have measured the Earth rotating. It wasn't.
Exactly.
So that's kind of irrelevant. And the Sagnac
well,
effect, just quickly, the Sagnac effect absolutely confirmed our thoughts on about how light works, confirming that it would be based on a different reference frame to if it was on a rotating body. So both the Mixomory experiment and the Sagnac effect back up the experiment that I've just shown you to be in correlation with a rotating Earth.
Well, when I looked at that experiment you just showed me, the first thing that I saw in my mind, and I could correct me if I'm wrong, but that gyroscope was a computer programmed gyroscope.
No, it's not a computer programmed gyroscope. It's a laser that's fired.
So it's totally mechanical? Yeah,
No,
so it has to be programmed.
No, it's not programmed. It fires a laser and measures the time it takes. Simple. Let me give you a quick demonstration of how these things work.
Because in my mind that makes absolutely no sense. If that's the case, then the Earth would literally be rotating under our feet. And
no, that's not what we would expect. Right.
Could you explain to me why? Like I said, you got to have a PhD to understand this. So please explain to me why.
Bob. Sorry, I pressed the wrong thing. Right. So this is a two-dimensional representation of the gyroscope that we were just talking about. Okay. So this blue box here fires a laser. This white diagonal line is a mirror half coated with silver, which splits the beam into two paths. So when the laser is fired, the beam is split into two paths, one clockwise, one counterclockwise. And as they go around, they would recombine at this point, and this here is a detector, okay? And that detector can tell the wavelength of both the paths that have come back. Now, if this is still, if it's not moving, when the lasers recombine, you would just get one waveform. There's no interference in the waveform at all. However, if the entire apparatus is moving, what that effectively does is shorten one of the paths that the light has to travel. So when it recombines at this point, you can see that the waveforms would be out of sync, and that would be measured as an interference, which is what Bob says is the drift. You can only get the interference if the entire apparatus is itself moving, which means it would have to be on something that's moving. Now, interestingly, one thing that Bob did when he did his experiment is they put it on like a lazy Susan and rotated it in the direction that would be counter to the Earth, and it actually countered out the interference, which is, again, what we would expect if the Earth was rotating. So they managed to confirm more than once that it is on a body that is rotating. So you can only get the interference pattern if it is on a rotating body. And that's what the Earth is. The Earth is a rotating body. Anywhere you put this on Earth, you will measure 15.04 degrees per hour as an interference pattern. And there's no other explanation for that. And, the only programming that would have to be involved is the receiver reading out the basic kind of, it needs to measure a point and then read out the data. You can't really program this to give a false result unless it's all just a complete lie, but it's not, because these things are used on airplanes, and if they weren't used correctly, we'd all fall out of the sky in a fiery death.
Not necessarily. I mean, they can program them where they can still get you to point A to point B, because like I said, from my pea brain mind, what you just showed me is an example of the Earth rotating. Well, if the Earth was rotating, why is it that I cannot fly an airplane to outer space and visually see the Earth rotate? Why is
because
it that
that's impossible.
Flew up in, but you're telling me that it's possible for a laser. Our eyes pick up that same radiation. That laser is nothing but radiation. All right, now our eyes pick up that same type of radiation. Our eyes are virtually receivers for those type of lasers.
Our eyes couldn't tell a 15-degree interference, no. Our eyes couldn't pick up a 15-degree interference in a laser like that. But, I mean, you couldn't fly a plane to space anyway because of how a plane works. They need air to be able to stay up.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Just like you said when they rotated with the spin of the Earth, they didn't get any fringes. All right, and you said that they didn't get any interference. And you said that's what we would expect on a rotating globe. So what you're saying is that if a plane flies with the direction of the Earth, it's going to affect the speed of travel. If it
No.
flies against the direction of the rotation of the Earth, it's going to affect the speed of travel.
No,
Could you explain why
that's
not?
a false assumption, Strawman. Simply because the atmosphere rotates with the Earth, and a plane uses the atmosphere to fly. So there would be no difference in flight time because it's within the Earth, and the atmosphere is all the same reference frame. So as the Earth's rotating, the atmosphere is rotating with it. So as an airplane takes off, it's already in that rotating atmosphere. So whichever way it goes, it's in reference to the fact that it's already rotating with the Earth. So you could.
Couldn't that same logic apply to the gyroscope? What
No.
makes that logic different for an airplane than
Because
for a
the
gyroscope?
gyroscope
What
isn't
makes the gyroscope so special with?
A ring laser gyroscope or a fiber optic gyroscope aren't affected by any outside interference. They're a self-contained unit. I mean, the thing that I was showing you, it's basically in a vacuum chamber, right? Or it's like fiber optic cables. There's nothing there that can be affected by the outside world. It doesn't get affected by the atmosphere. It doesn't get affected by any light. There's nothing outside that can affect that. The only thing it can do is detect motion of what's it's on, because that either shortens or extends the length of the path that the light has to travel. Nothing else can affect it. It can't see the atmosphere. It can't sense the atmosphere. Moving it around in the atmosphere is not going to make any difference. The only thing it can do is fire the laser and measure the interference pattern based on what it gets back. It's a false analogy to say, well, an airplane's affected by the atmosphere, so why isn't the gyroscope affected by the atmosphere? Because it's not. It's designed to not be affected by the atmosphere. That's one of the main reasons that they work so effectively.
I mean, like I said, for most of us, that seems pretty hard to understand. I'm not telling you that you're incorrect. I don't know how to make cell phones to create cell phone signals back and forth and GPS signals, so I'm not going to tell you that I'm Einstein. But for the normal person, for the normal person that you interact with every day, that makes absolutely no sense. For us, if a helicopter rises to the point the atmosphere thins out, the higher up you get, all right? So that means that the rate of spin should be affected different in different parts of the atmosphere, which it is. So if we go up to, let's just say, the thermosphere where the ISS is, if we go up to the thermosphere, we should be able to sit still and literally watch the Earth turn under our feet.
You'd be outside of the atmosphere that's effective for use for planes or helicopters. Any helicopter or plane that is flying is still within a relatively dense amount of atmosphere. If you go up to where the ISS is, you're practically in a vacuum. And a plane or a helicopter couldn't ever get up there because they wouldn't be able to generate the amount of lift needed. They always are stuck by the atmosphere. A helicopter will move with the Earth rotating if it's just hovering there, because the atmosphere is also rotating with the Earth.
So what you're saying is that from the ISS we can see the Earth spin.
Well, no, the ISS is orbiting the Earth, so you can. If you want to see the Earth spin, there's plenty of things that have shown that, like the EchoStar 11. You ever seen that?
No, sir.
So in the 90s, the Dish Network, actually a cable network, put a camera on their geostationary satellite. Let me just. And the satellite was called EchoStar 11. And it had a 24-hour feed. Anyone could just go and look at this. And it's literally a 24-hour feed of the Earth rotating in space. Let me just bring this up. Display one. So here we go. This is EchoStar 11 from the geostationary satellite used to broadcast. Let me just skip it forward so you can see it when it's not got the sun shining directly in the lens. So geostationary means it stays above a particular point and rotates with the Earth, but you can see the Earth rotating in the sense that you can see the light from the sun being reflected off one way. These aren't stars that you see in those green and blue bits. That's just solar radiation that's damaged the camera lens,
right,
leaving pixels and stuff. You wouldn't be able to see the stars based on the exposure of the light coming from Earth, but as you can see, you can tell that the Earth's rotating because of the way that the light is going across it. And this was a live feed for 24 hours a day for, I think this was up for 13 years that people could watch until the camera died. And it's an excellent example of seeing the Earth rotate from space as we would expect it to.
Are you fine with that?
It's what we would expect to see from a geostationary satellite. The thing is, when you are out at that distance, you don't really have satellites that orbit the Earth.
So what you're telling me, so let me stop you. Like I said, brother, I like intellectual people, but I also like people that can be very honest with themselves. And for me, being a big non-believer of most things that I see on TV or YouTube, the first thing that I noticed with that is that the clouds remained exactly the same.
Oh no, they don't. No. I've analysed the footage. Actually, I've gone through that with somebody. Even on this one, let me bring that back up. So if we look at the clouds just here, where they are down here, and pay attention to the way that it's curved down here, and as you go forward, you can see the curves. It's not the curves extended to the left. It was here. When you go back here, it's closer in, and then you go here and you see it's moved out. And the further you go, the more that this extends out that way. And then you've got what looks like a river of clouds going down this way. You can actually see quite easily how that seems to flow down and separate into 2 or 3 different paths as it goes. And that, again, the way those clouds are moving is the prediction that we expect over a day. So you can quite clearly see as you click through it that the clouds have moved. And I think this bit here, this cloud here, is one of the best examples because you can literally see it extend. At this point here, it's quite close. And as you go out, it's extending to the left, extends more to the left, extends more to the left. So the clouds absolutely don't stay the same. But there's other ones.
Brother, I mean, if they move,
you can go to
very minuscule.
Yeah, that's the amount we would expect it to. You got to remember that that's like massive compared to humans. This is a more recent one. So this is from the Himawari satellite, which is a Japanese weather satellite. And there's a channel called Where's Wally that's actually correlated a lot of live images of where the clouds are. He lives on the coast of Australia, and he's correlated the cloud patterns in the sky in real time. And this is a really good one to show that you can see that the Earth's rotating and that the clouds are moving because it's done a bit faster. This is, I think, about a week's worth in a few seconds. Interesting tidbit about this camera. So just up here, you've got the border of Mongolia and China, right? Now, I think it was 2014, 2015, maybe a little later, but there was some crazy wildfires going on the border of China and Mongolia, but in such a remote area that nobody knew about it. And the only way they saw that those wildfires were there and managed to get in and save all the villagers in the local area was because of this satellite. Because it's got cameras on, as you can see, that are designed to pick up thermal signatures. And it saw the forest fires. And there was no other satellites that could see that. There was, they're far enough away that even planes and stuff wouldn't really see the smoke. And the only way that they managed to get and save that area was because of this satellite in geostationary orbit above Japan and Australia. I just think that's quite amazing.
Yeah, I mean, dude, technology is coming far away. But like I said, even with us being, like I said, small-minded humans, looking at those videos, I understand that it's a geostationary satellite. Satellites are supposed to move with the Earth orbit. What I saw from the Himawari camera was the weather patterns moving. I didn't see any land masses moving. I didn't see the Earth rotating. Now, of course, yeah, we saw the light that came across the Earth. So we saw
again, it's geostationary. When you're out that far, you don't really have things orbiting the Earth.
Right.
I mean,
right.
You could kind of. There isn't a camera on the Lagrange 1, so that's a bit of a shame that we'd be able to see that, because that's at a point where it is kind of stationary in space compared to us, and we would. But with most cameras out that far at geostationary orbit, well, and none, in fact, you don't have them orbiting the Earth because it's too big of a diameter for it to do. So it orbits with the Earth, and it has to be at a very specific point to be able to do that. But that is literally videos showing you from space of the Earth rotating.
Well, like I said, now from a relative perspective, what I saw was the sun moving around the Earth. It looks more geocentric from our perspective. I'm not, like I said, once again, I'm not telling you that you're wrong. Mathematically, we could write it both ways. But from what I saw the light the light and shadow moving across the Earth. I didn't see the Earth itself moving. You do get that, right?
Yeah, hold on. Let me.
So, like I said, so relatively speaking, from my point of view, I can easily be devil's advocate and say, well,
Here we
that's
go.
just showing that the Earth is stationary.
So I was wrong about something. There is a camera at Lagrange 1, Epic Discover, as my friend has just pointed out to me. So let's have a quick look at that. So this is at Lagrange point 1, which is a gravitational still point where something can kind of hang between the gravity of the Earth and the Sun. And this is, I think, an entire year of 1 year of epic images. So this is an entire year of time lapse of the Earth rotating from space. Let's slow it down a bit so we can.
Can you make it bigger as well?
Oh, yep. Sorry.
Yeah.
There we go. Obviously, it's not as many frames as the other ones, but it's enough to clearly see that the Earth is rotating. You can see again that the cloud patterns change over the time throughout the days. So yeah, sorry, I was wrong. There is a camera on Discover at Lagrange 1, and that's one that I need to use more often.
Dude, that image, I mean, like I said, that does not look believable.
In what way?
I don't know.
I mean, that's what I would expect to see to me.
This is what you would expect it to be?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would expect to see of the Earth from that distance, you know? Just to say it's fake without any reason, I find can be a bit disingenuous. There's no reason to disbelieve an image just because it comes from NASA or another space agency. You know,
and trust me, I don't. There's a lot of information, a lot of things that I learned, dude. I learned from NASA as a child growing up. I'm just telling you that NASA doesn't know everything, and the people who run NASA don't know everything, and there are major government cover-ups and things that go on with societies. I think that people that don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And time after time, the governments have deceived the populace. And I think once again, we are being deceived about a lot of things. But like I keep explaining to you, mathematically, maybe from that vantage point or from that height, we can definitely say, hey, yeah, man, the world's a globe. But for the normal human, without a PhD, without the IQ to understand the spill that you just gave, it would be hard for them to obtain that on themselves without going blindly into believing scientism the same way
I'll give you
religious
that.
people do.
I'll give you that. Science isn't easy for everybody to understand. Physics and
exactly.
Algebra, and quadratic equations, and kind of basic stuff you learn in college and high school. Not everyone understands that, and
if they don't understand that,
but that's fine, right? The thing is, science and math have no obligation to be understood by everybody. Not everybody can have the mind of an Einstein or Stephen Hawking and be able to do that kind of mathematics, But just because not everybody can do that shouldn't take away from the fact that some people have done it. It doesn't make sense to me to say, oh, well, the average person can't understand that, therefore we can't really trust it, because who cares if the average person can't understand it? It's, NASA aren't going to space to prove stuff to the average person. And this is one argument I have with flat earthers quite a lot. There was like, well, why can't NASA just put a camera on the moon and go and prove us wrong? Well, frankly, because NASA don't give a fuck about you, and they're not doing what they do to prove you wrong. They really couldn't care what an idiot on the internet is screaming. They don't care. In fact, they don't even decide what they get to do.
See, that's a problem that a lot of us tax-paying Americans or wherever space agency or country you pay your taxes to is going to have, man. Because if we want an open door policy when it comes down to these things, and for you to say, yeah, we went to the moon. 40 years ago, but we destroyed the technology.
NASA are a federal agency, right?
So listen at me. So what if I told you, yeah, guy, I dug a hole to the center of the Earth 40 years ago, and I had this great system to get there, and I showed you all of these pictures, and you say, well, yeah, man, let's go back, and I said, well, I destroyed the technology to get there. Would you believe that I actually went to the center of the Earth?
If you had evidence for it, but all right.
I mean, yeah,
let me ask you a question based. Let me ask you a question based on what you said there. Why can't we make a Concorde anymore?
Why can't we?
Yeah.
We choose not to?
No. We can't make a Concorde. We can't make a Concorde because we destroyed the technology. You know, it's not just a case of let's build all these parts together. You have to, for something like a Concorde or even say the Ford Model T, all right, you have to build the tools in the factories to be able to build these things, and they just don't exist anymore.
I had a problem with the Concorde as well because that was one of those things that, as a kid or as a younger adult growing up, I was like, hell, that's one of the coolest things ever. The Concorde, it can go up and doesn't really have to fly anywhere, can get anywhere on Earth in no time. And then a couple years later, it's gone. It vanishes. So
yeah, they weren't economically viable. The amount of fuel that they need to do what they did, it was kind of.
Regardless, it could have been useful. That kind of technology is what piggybacked. If it wasn't for,
but there is new supersonic planes that they're designing.
No Einstein.
But there's new supersonic planes that are being designed. Improvements on that. And if we look at rocket
Nothing
technology,
like the Concorde.
Oh no, there's some coming that there's literally supersonic planes that are the successor to the Concorde on the way that can actually fly faster and higher. But then we look at rocket technology to say, oh well, we destroyed the technology to go to the moon. Well, they destroyed that specific technology. A lot of it was not reusable anyway, and some of it was too old to be reused, and some of it ended up in a museum. But we've got better technology now. There's 14 different companies that are designing modules to go to the moon that NASA are going to choose. I think they're going with SpaceX, but our rocketry technology nowadays is so much better than it was in the 60s. We can capture rockets that have sent stuff up and flying backwards, catch them on boats at sea, or land them at places and then reuse them, and that kind of advance is amazing. We don't have the stuff to go to the moon that we had back then. Mainly because America decided to stop going to the moon. The funding for NASA fell by like 70% after the Apollo missions, right? So NASA didn't have the money to go to the moon. So what they decided to do was focus on experimenting on space. Experiment, go to low Earth orbit, spend as much time in low Earth orbit, simulating deep space as we can to learn as much as we can. But now we've got to the stage where technology is advanced enough that we can actually plan to go back to the moon and maybe even further. Yes, it's taken a while, and it pisses me off, and I'm sure it pisses a lot of people off that it's taken a while. But those kind of decisions aren't anything to do with NASA. It's more to do with the American government and the way that they were funding stuff,
This is the problem that we have is for, me being an American, a problem that I would have for that is you don't have the technology anymore. Cool, you destroyed, the equipment was destroyed. We didn't have a bunch of duplicates of these parts to get to the moon. Cool, fine, that happens, right? Disasters happen. What happened to the data? The data that you use
the data's all there.
To the moon?
The data's all there.
The data's all there. The data's all there recreating that same Apollo should be.
But they don't want to. They don't want to go back in the Apollo rockets. Those things were fucking death traps. It's an absolute miracle that anybody survived going up in an Apollo rocket, because frankly they were, they were basic engineering. They were rickety buckets. They weren't amazing sleek technology, and we don't want to go to the moon in something like the Apollo missions anymore, because they're not as safe as modern equipment. We can do a lot better stuff with the equipment that we've got. None of the data was lost, by the way. That's actually a bit of a flat Earth myth. What was lost was data from one of the original tapes. Let me just finish.
That's not even. I just want to correct you. That's not really a flat Earth myth. That's a myth. Like if you go on Netflix.
Yeah, right. And NASA, an anti
moon landing. That's a moon landing myth.
What actually happened was all the data that came in, it was recorded on physical cassette tapes, right? And they had a finite amount of them. They didn't have a lot of them. So what they would do, once they got the data, they would then back up that data, send it to where it needed to be, to the places in Australia or to the other space places in North America, and they'd all have the backups. And then if they needed to, they'd reuse those tapes. They'd record over them because they just didn't have enough. And that's what's happened. One of the first missions, the original tapes, was reused and, covered up. So when they went to look for the data and they found that tape, they found that the data that they thought was on that tape wasn't, because it had been overwritten. However, all the data had been backed up and sent to where it needed to be. So there never was actually any data that was lost.
No, see, like I said, I heard a guy from NASA himself say that they lost the data, or we couldn't go back forever. I mean, for whatever reason, like I said, I don't know. I know that's a pretty basic moon landing myth that's been around since the 80s. You could have watched any old moon landing conspiracy theory back in the day and get that same kind of feeling. Some of these things have nothing to do with the shape of the Earth. Some of these things have something to do with
distrust of NASA and stuff.
Trust of your government, trust of NASA, trust of anything that you can't verify for yourself. And judging the past, we should always be wary of what goes on around us. We should be wary of what we put our money into. There's one more thing I would like to ask you. Another thing that gets me as far as being a critical thinker is as we get closer to the sun, it gets colder. All right. And trust me, I've been through elementary school and high school, and I know all of the elementary sciences. I understand that they say that the particles in the atmosphere get thinner as you get up higher, so that there's nothing for the sun's radiation to transfer heat to. But if I am in that region, would in my body be a receptor for the heat transfer from the radiation? The radiation should not be picky. It can't pick and choose what molecules it decides to excite and heat up.
So are you asking why certain...
Why would it get... Yeah, why would...
okay, so...
Where they at in the ISS and a thermosphere that's supposedly 3,000 degrees or 3,600 degrees or whatever.
Oh, right, you're talking about heat transfer. Okay, so...
yeah.
First off, the individual particles that are in the thermosphere are 36,000 degrees, right? However...
Yep.
Okay, so... Right. Different pen. Okay, so let's say that this area in here is the thermosphere, okay? Yep. And you've got your particles in the thermosphere. And these individual particles, all right, they're all 36,000 degrees or whatever, okay? However, because there is such a gap between each of them, that they don't transfer much energy. And let's say you've got the ISS going through, all right? As the ISS is traveling through it, it's not hitting many of these particles because there's not many of them. So the heat from the particles doesn't have time to transfer to the ISS. Not only that, but the ISS orbits the Earth in, what is it, once every 90 minutes or something? And it spends half of that time facing away from the sun, which means any heat that it's caught is then radiated back away. So it never really has the chance to heat up. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense to me because the sun's radiation should heat it up to that point, regardless if it's there for an hour or 30 minutes. The sun,
so the ISS
should
also
still be receiving radiation from the sun as long as in the visible
and it
region
does.
of the sun.
And it does. And there is actually a noticeable rise and drop in temperature as it goes in and out of the sun. However, the ISS is also designed to radiate sun away. It's designed to reflect sunlight away. So
let's take the ISS out of the equation. Let's say a thermometer, man. Like if we drop a thermometer in the thermosphere, it will read a negative temperature. It's going to read a very, very cold temperature.
Yeah, if it's a normal thermometer that reads the air temperature, yeah, it's going to read very small. If you could literally hold it onto one of those particles, it might pick it up.
Well, the thermometer itself is made of particles. It is made of atoms. It's made of all of these things that we're talking about. So once that thermometer is inside, once that thermometer receives the radiation from the sun, it should heat up instantly because of how hot that radiation is. I mean, I wouldn't say instantly in a point of an infinite way, but I'm talking.
if the thermometer stayed in the sun, then yeah, that would happen. But to stay up there, you have to be in orbit, which means that you have to be traveling like 17,000 miles an hour, and you're never going to be in a point where you are constantly in the sun. You're always going to be going from sun to shade, building up that heat, radiating away. It would depend on the thermometer, how radiated the surfaces of the thermometer are, how reflected they are, what color they are. If it was a black thermometer with a black tube, then it would probably heat up quicker than a white or a silver thermometer,
because
right?
it's going to absorb instead of reflect. But if I'm taking the thermometer outside, it gets to 110 degrees out here in Charleston, man. If I walk outside my 60-degree house with my thermometer, within a minute or two, that thermometer's reading.
Yeah, that's because the mercury or whatever in that thermometer is reacting to the environment that it's in. In the same way, if you took that thermometer to the thermosphere, it would pretty damn quickly register a very, very cold temperature. It would only start to register a warm temperature. If the entire thing were to heat up, then it would register a higher temperature. But like we just said, because it's going to have to be in an orbit, it would never be in a position where it would take in enough radiation from the sun to heat itself up enough to explode that thermometer or whatever. It would always be going from shade to heat, from shade to heat. Maybe depending on the material over time.
That you can't really prove.
In what way?
A statement that you can't really prove, because if I put in my mind, if I put a thermometer in the thermosphere with all of that radiation coming through, even though there's not much particles, the minute that the thermometer gets within the sun's radiation, it should excite and melt instantly. I mean, not maybe, like I said, maybe not instantly, but within a minute.
Like I said, it would depend. Thermometers aren't designed to be in the thermosphere, so maybe depending on the material that it is, who knows? But the ISS the ISS is not made of the same thing that a thermometer is. The ISS is made of something designed to be up there, and the thing is, the ISS isn't getting away scot-free. The outside of the ISS is actually being radiated away over time. And quite often when astronauts are doing spacewalks now, they can dislodge massive panels of paint or solvent and stuff that's on the outside that's been damaged by solar radiation and that constant flux between hot and cold as it's orbiting the Earth. So,
right. But I mean, so with the statement that you made, you said, well, thermometers aren't really designed to test the temperatures of the thermosphere. Well, if that's
the materials themselves.
So if that's the case, then how do we get the thermometers to measure the temperature of the thermosphere? Because we have done that also.
We don't just take up the standard plastic,
Oh, of course, exactly.
They've got equipment designed specifically to do that, and usually it's digital detectors that would be actually generating saying what the temperature is up there. But
right. So how would you measure the temperature of those charged particles versus the temperature? How would we get an accurate reading? How do we know that the thermosphere gets up to 4,000 degrees? Or how do we know that the temperature in the thermosphere drops down to negative 100 degrees? How do we know that this is
because they can measure those things. They can measure the energy excitation of certain particles using thermal cameras. You can use digital detectors to see what's hitting, particles that are hitting digital detectors and what temperature those particles are before they dissipate their energy. There's lots of different ways. Frankly, I don't know all the ways that they use to measure temperatures up there, but I'm sure they've developed more efficient ways than just waving opening the fucking window in the ISS going, I'm just going to hold the temperature thermometer out for a minute, lads. All right. Shit, my arm.
No, like I said, I researched it, man. What they do is they put these thermometers on the ISS, on the outside of it. And that's how they monitor the temperatures from what I've read, from things like space.com, and I can't remember the other website. So that's what they said, how they were getting these readings. And I can't remember the exact reading, like negative 100 degrees or something of the sort. But in my opinion, those pieces of equipment, being that they're molecules and there is heat transfer in a vacuum. I know a lot of people try to say,
depending on the type of heat, obviously.
Well, man, it's radiation. So I mean, heat from the sun is always going to travel through a vacuum. The problem is there's no atmosphere, so the heat kind of scatters at a faster rate. But what it does is going to attract to the nearest molecule to it. So, like I said, for people like me,
What do you mean? heat's not going to attract to anything. Like radiation just travels in a straight line.
Yeah, so there's no molecules for it to be absorbed. Maybe I shouldn't say attract. There's no molecules to absorb the radiation. You understand?
Yeah.
So to me, if you put that thermometer up there, you're giving something to absorb the radiation. Now, like I said, maybe you're right. Maybe it's some kind of special thermometer that's going to kick off all of that heat and only monitor the cold. But I can't, to me, logically, that doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm pretty sure they've got so many different ways of measuring temperatures, and a lot of it is literally just waiting for a particle to hit it. You can measure the ambient temperature of outer space quite easily,
Atmosphere,
they can. I think they use radio waves, but the thing is, the ISS is designed to be in that environment. They didn't just put it up there without and think, oh, it's just going to melt. They designed material and equipment that would be suitable for being in that environment. And it's,
right.
it's as simple as that. They do get $52 million a day. It's got to go somewhere except for all the hookers and blow. That's some right.
They can go back in our pockets, but hey.
Let me ask you, right? Okay, a lot of people are like, oh, well, NASA get $52 million a day, and they're just lying to us. So, what are they doing with that $52 million a day?
What is NASA doing?
Yeah.
I have absolutely no fucking
because
clue.
You know what? For $52 million a day, that better be some fucking that better be some good hookers and blow. Is all I'm saying, right?
That better be some good fucking hookers and blow, because with that amount of money, dude, we could end world hunger. We can fucking make energy systems that are much more efficient.
Well, why don't they just take 10%? Why don't they just take 10% of the military's budget then?
I agree with that shit 100% as well. Take some of the militaries across the world don't need that much of my fucking money. We can end a lot of the problems if we put the money back into the people. I see no reason for fucking China to invade Russia. I see no reason for America to invade Iraq. Dude, I have no part in that shit. So for us, I want to know what NASA's doing with my $52 million. I know you're not spending $100,000 on a goddamn hammer like you said you did. That hammer didn't cost you $100,000. I mean, and for what the normal public sees, we don't see a lot of productivity from NASA. I feel like we would get way more productivity by putting that money elsewhere. A lot of the things that NASA claims, NASA is the only people that can prove it. A lot of the things that these other space agencies claim, they are the only people that can prove it. And
well, they can prove it for each other.
Well, cool, but whether they put a mirror on the moon or not, it's not going to make our lives any different. The things that I like were the creations like cell phone technology. I mean, that's things that we can use. Medical technology, that's things that we see every day. Some of that did come from NASA.
Yeah, this screen from NASA, Jaws of Life that firemen use.
Things we get.
Pneumatic systems for that was from NASA. There's so much stuff from NASA that's good, but it's not just that, right? They're also experimenting in space, and I think what people don't realize is that space travel and exploring our solar system is important, because we fuck this planet, right? And we've used the resources, but there's so many more resources out there just in our solar system. There's asteroids that contain more water than there is on Earth. There's asteroids with enough precious metals to make everyone on Earth a billionaire. We need those resources that are out there. So I see the money that NASA and all these other agencies are spending as vitally important for the future of humanity. No one's going to deny there's horrific shit going on at the moment, starvation, war, famine coming, definitely, but that doesn't change the need for things like space exploration, because I want my kids and their kids to at least have a chance. And I think the only way that's going to happen is with resources that are out there.
I mean, I agree. When Christopher Columbus discovered America, he lost all funding until Ferdinand and Isabella decided, hey, I'm going to throw some more money at you. And look at what he found. I'm a big advocate of exploration, but it seems like the space exploration is almost out of human reach. I don't think that we are biologically suited to enter this realm that you call outer space.
Oh, hell no. No, that's extremely dangerous to us. Radiation, cold,
and I don't
starvation.
Think that we fully understand. I don't think we fully understand what outer space is. So yeah, like I said, whenever you see me post on those Facebook pages, whenever I got something to say, is because I feel that the knowledge that was posted was incorrect. I have never attacked the person for saying, hey, I feel like the earth is a globe or the earth is flat. As long as you got a logical explanation for why you feel that way, hey, we can talk. We can, because it really doesn't make a difference. Life goes on. I just don't like the assholes that'll say, all of this bullshit. Why is this? I mean, you get it from the flat earthers, you get it from the globe earthers. And it's like people don't have the IQ to make decisions for themselves. I have never been part of a flat earth community. And the culture that I come from, we have a tendency to disbelieve things coming from our government. So ever since I was a child, I disbelieve things that came from our government.
I mean, that a lot of people disbelieve the government, and in a lot of cases, they've got damn good reason to disbelieve the government. I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It annoys me that a lot of people just go straight to anything NASA's done is false, because, I mean, frankly, for NASA to fake what they do would be damn near impossible.
Well, what I tell flat earthers is when they say, well, all satellites are fake, I say, that's bullshit. There may not be thousands of satellites in the sky like they say, but if we can go to Google Earth and take a picture of my goddamn street from my phone, then I do understand that there's something up there that can see us, dude. I'm not fucking retarded. But in the same aspect, we don't understand the full shape of the Earth as far as us being a human and our size relative to what we're saying the universe and what the Earth is. So yeah, if you had a guy that got up 50 miles and he saw the curvature of the Earth, dude, that's great. I would be the first person to say, hey man, yeah, the Earth is a globe, but for normal people, I can understand if you do not understand that the Earth is a globe. Me personally, the way I live my life is we live using a geometric form where everything is flat in perspective to us. Everything on the Earth is flat in our perspective.
I disagree with that assertion that everything's flat in our perspective. Like I said, as my time on a sailor, I remember on the HMS Westminster as we were heading south for sea trials, sitting on the back deck where the helicopters land, like just looking and watching the North Star get closer and closer to the horizon, and there's no reason why a star should ever go behind the horizon. And then using the sextant and comparing it to the math of the globe and the fact that 1 degree is every 6 to 9 miles, and that's how much the things in the sky would drop, and that only makes sense if the Earth is a globe. And every navigation, I spent a lot of time doing navigation, and you said earlier, one thing you said was no one uses a globe to navigate. I did. That's what I used to do my navigation in the Navy. That's what I used to plan the amount of fuel that we needed to make sure the ship got from A to B. I used a globe to plan those routes. But
you didn't have to, because we can also plot those positions out on a flat plane using trigonometry and still get to the same point.
But you can't use a flat map like a distorted. Say I couldn't use the classic AE map to plot my routes if I'm trying to go east or west. That's for sure.
What's an AE map?
The azimuthal equidistant map. The classic flat Earth map.
All right. So the azimuthal equidistant map is not a fucking map that shows distances between things on the Earth. I mean, that's a retarded assertion to make, brother. So
it actually does in some ways, right? If you look at this map, so if you go from the middle to the out, let me just explain. If you go from the middle to the outside, right, north to south, those distances are accurate. But it's east to west. The further away from the center you go, east to west gets it distorted. So I wouldn't be able to use any kind of flat map to plan the amount of fuel that I needed to get $1 billion warship from point A to point B, because
let me ask you a question.
I have to use a globe.
All right, so let me ask you: if I tell you to take your ship from Scotland to South Carolina, and I draw you a map, what was it, maybe 4,000 miles away? I don't know exactly, but let's just say 4,000 miles away. I can draw you a flat map representing each of those 4,000 miles, and you can get here. It's the same way as if I give you a road map from
Yeah.
here to California.
However,
you can get there using this map, and
But
also
that-
plot out how much energy you're going to use to get
So,
there. And how
yeah,
long
but
it's
the
gonna
point
take to
is
get there.
that flat map that you've used is based on a globe. And that's the thing. Any flat map, any map that is flat is based on a globe. It has to be. A
And here we
distortion
go
of a globe
again,
somehow.
all right, cool. But there we go again with the duality. I get it. It is based on that globe model, right? But the accuracy of the mileage in between point A to point B, the time that that you need to get there, and the energy that you use to get there, can all be done on this flat plane. So if I make a map of South Carolina, of my home state, I do not have to make it with showing any curvature at all. And then I understand mathematically we can make it to show curvature, but I can drive across the state of South Carolina using a piece of flat map, because at our size in relation to the Earth, every step that we take, the Earth is going to always be flat in front of us and always going to be flat behind us. Not unless we're giants, that's going to be 25% of the Earth's size. We will never experience that. So
but again, those flat
maps
maps that you're using are based on a globe. They like road maps in America. They're based on a specific datum. Someone would have to tell me what that datum particularly is. But the datum is a globe. And one of the most important things in this entire argument is that all navigation is based on a globe. Be it pilots creating routes, be it sailors, be it road routes, anything. All navigation is based on the Earth being a globe, because it has to be.
No. Well, I disagree, because prior to the Earth, the globe model being a factor or being widely used across societies, cartography, map making was here forever. They did not base it, but they based it off of point A to point B, and it had nothing to do with them even knowing that a globe existed.
But when they mapped it out, it showed a globe, and when ancient mariners were
nobody had a map of the Earth at that point. There was continents.
There's been a globe.
There's
literally been a globe since the 1400s. But one of the
there's been a globe since prior to the 1400s, because, like I said, even
but one with actually like
Ptolemaic
countries on and stuff. But one of the thing is about navigation is, even before maps and they would use the stars to navigate, that was still based on a globe. They might not have understood why it was based on a globe, but it is. When you map out the positions of the stars and use things like sextants and astrolabes, it is based on a globe. It has to be. It's the only way it works mathematically. Whenever a pilot is
it's based on a celestial sphere. It's based on a celestial sphere.
Yeah,
so
but it only matches if the way that you map things out, like with a sextant, it only works if the surface that you're on is a globe. That's one of the important things. When you actually have to map them out.
So prior to a person having a sextant, let's talk about these people in Egypt. All right, Egypt was one of the most advanced civilizations at its time.
And they stayed in Egypt, remember?
Yeah, they did what?
They stayed in Egypt for thousands of years.
No, not necessarily, man. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily, though, but regardless of where they at, we're talking about, I'm taking a small area. These people had no knowledge of the knowledge that we have nowadays. So they made maps based on what they knew. Whether it was one simple city in Scotland, the ancient people, the ancient tribes in Scotland made maps, so they knew where to get point A to point B. A lot of people use the stars. We use the North Star as a basis, because we know that it barely moves, or it doesn't move as far as the human perspective. It moves, but it moves so minuscule that
0.004 seconds a year. But the thing is, right, all those little maps, right? All it's long range navigation. That's the thing, right? All those little maps, right? They would be kind of accurate over short distances, right? But if you were to put all those little maps together across the whole world, it would show a globe. But any long range navigation, hold on, like any long range, because nowadays, if you have to plan a route, when you plan it out, it only correlates to a globe. Like all long range navigation in the world, ask any long range pilot, they have to do it using something called the Haversine formula, which is something specifically that works if the Earth is a globe. It wouldn't work if the Earth was flat. And you have to take into
tell me that again.
The Haversine formula.
Haversine.
Haversine, Haversine.
Haversine.
Yeah, I would seriously suggest researching that in relation to planning things like Great Circle routes. Because it literally only works if the Earth is a globe. I wanted to get
So
back
why
to...
why
Sorry,
can't
go
I
on.
take a map of the United States, right, and then take a map of Canada and attach them to each other and drive from here to the most northern point in Canada using these flat maps? I mean, that
Well,
seems very
if you were to like
re-
put the most accurate maps together and like on somewhat big enough, it would actually show a curve. In fact, MC Toon did this when he got the maps for flight routes and actually stuck them. It only matched when it was on a
flight.
globe.
But dude, what the problem is, flight routes are simulated maps. All right, so
Well, they're not.
that doesn't really
They match reality.
But so with my map, if I was to take a map, let's just say a quarter of the Earth, let's just use a quarter to make it more feasible. If I was to take a map and use all of the land masses on my side of the Earth, South America, North America, I can effectively drive from the most southern point to the most northern point without showing a curve on my map. It would all be represented
No, you couldn't.
on a flat sheet
Here's
of
the
paper.
thing: you really, really couldn't. If you were to take all of so you wouldn't. There isn't one map that would cover the whole of the USA. You'd have a whole bunch of maps for each area,
Of course,
right?
because of size.
If you were to take all of those maps, right, all of the maps that show you the drive from Canada to South America, right, and you were trying to put them on something so they all matched out, you would find that it would only fit if it went onto a curved surface. And that's something that MC Toon demonstrated when he mapped out the route that the plane would take. And it would be the same with road maps because I actually got told here the datum that road maps use is the WGS84, which is literally a 3D model of the Earth. And that's what road maps in the USA are based on. So road maps use the WGS84, which is based on a globe.
Well, like I said, I'm might be a little older than most of your viewers, but I'm from an era where road maps were just, they didn't have all of the data that we have now.
Yeah, but they would have been based on a datum. They would always be based on some kind of base datum to get their data from.
They were based on roadway systems and highways, roadway systems, highways, railroad systems.
Those kind of
like
maps
that.
may
Those
not
were
show
the
distances
easiest ways.
accurately. It's like looking at the tube map for the London Underground. It doesn't really show distances accurately. But
And it will not. It will not. But if we can make it show distances accurately and shrink it down to a point where you may need a magnifying glass to see it, but we can make this road map where I can literally drive from South America to Canada on a flat surface.
MC Toon, who you did debate, actually, that was a good one. He has a $10,000 challenge. If you can piece all the maps for the US together and they lay flat, then you get $10,000. And he's put the link to that challenge in the chat. And he's got the money. It's in escrow. I know for a fact he's got that money. Just ask Flat Out Hero.
And that's just in the United States. If I can put all the maps together in the United
If you can
States.
get all the road maps of the USA together and they lay completely flat, then they give you 10 grand.
Oh shit, dude! I got Photoshop. I can try that.
Do it.
Like I said,
The challenge is there.
I've never tried it, but like I said, I do this for entertainment. But you just gave me a challenge that's worth a little bit of money, and I think MC Toon might be a little bit crazy and off his rockers with that one. Logically, it should be able to be represented as a globe or on a flat plane. I should be able to draw these maps out either way, and I think that that's something that I think that I can prove to him. And I think that's a really crazy assessment. Most people probably won't waste the time to try it, but I'll at least try it. And if I'm wrong, I'll hit you up on Facebook and say, yeah, dude, I couldn't do it.
Best thing to do is contact MC Toon. So, let me just see here. The challenge. All right.
Yeah, I'll contact him. I got his info.
Challenge: piece together maps for the entire continental US to form one large map. Charts are pieced together by trimming the maps so neighbouring charts can lay next to each other with lines of latitude and longitude in alignment. If, when pieced together, they lay flat, you win. If they do not lay flat, but instead form a three-dimensional shape, you do not win. And it's FAA sectional charts, tactical pilotage charts, and ONC charts. And he's got links to all of them there, or you can buy physical maps to do it with. And so, yeah, I'll give you the link to the challenge because he's actually got a breakdown of the challenge on his website.
Now, one thing I might say is that the shapes might be a little different once I piece these things together. But I really feel like I can make it happen. I don't see why not.
Well, do it, like and I'm sure MC Tuna have you back on to talk about that.
Right. Things are in perspective, and like I say, a lot of problems that I have is that a lot of the globers want at least say to the flat earthers, "Hey, dude, you right about that. If you don't have a fucking PhD in astrophysicist, you would not know how pressure gradients really work as far as with the atmosphere."
Well, I've got a BSc, and I'm kind of all right with it. I know, I'm not a real person with a PhD like PhD Tony out there, you know. I'm just a lowly BSc person.
I mean, and a lot of the information that you're giving, while it is very educational, I enjoy it. It is a regurgitation of information that someone has taught you or told you. You didn't actually plug. You have never took the masses of all of the planets in our solar system, plug all of the numbers in, and make sure that all of these orbits work.
Well, no, because not everyone redoes all of science. That would be silly. However, what I have done as a physics student is experiments like the Cavendish. And I wanted to kind of get back to gravity and talk about what we understand of gravity and how we can scientifically validate what we know about gravity. All right. We may not know exactly what causes gravity or why it exists, but that doesn't mean that we can't demonstrate it is an absolute real thing that exists in the universe. You know of the Cavendish experiment, right?
Of course.
And why, in your opinion, why does the Cavendish experiment not demonstrate a mass-to-mass attraction?
I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm saying that the reason why that there's a cause of the mass-to-mass attraction. Most people with Newtonian gravity thinks that the definition of gravity is mass attracts mass. Well, Einstein knew that theory wouldn't fly for long, so
it wasn't a theory.
He created the theory of general relativity, which states that gravity is actually the curvature of space-time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, okay.
Okay,
hold on. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. We don't need to start going into Einstein and gravity, all right?
All right. So when we talk about Cavendish experience, like I said, I'm not a mathematician.
Newton. The thing about Newton was he never really had a theory of gravity. Newton simply described an observation. He simply observed that masses appear to attract other masses, and he calculated mathematically how to describe that. Fg equals gm1 m2 over r squared. That wasn't a theory. That was literally an observation. He saw that this happened, and he came up with the universal law of gravitation. And then we've got things like Cavendish, which can demonstrate that mass-to-mass apparent attraction definitely exists. Regardless of what it actually is, all right, you can 100% demonstrate that there appears to be a mass-to-mass attraction. And the wonderful thing about the Cavendish was that it removed the 9.8 meters per second, 9.8 meters, 9.8 meters per second squared acceleration downwards, because the entire apparatus had that same thing on, and it allowed him to test gravity in a horizontal, left to right motion, and found out that the calculations are absolutely correct, that there is definitely, regardless of what's causing it, an apparent attraction between mass that is represented by Fg equals g m1 m2 over r squared. You've got other experiments that demonstrate it, like the Schehelian experiment in Scotland. And we don't need to start talking about, well, Einstein described it as this and this and this. What we can say for sure is that there is definitely an apparent attraction between mass. And you can absolutely describe gravity as an apparent attraction between mass. What Einstein did was he came along and went, well, yeah, but that's not really the whole truth. There is an apparent attraction, but what's causing that is an uneven distribution of mass causing a distortion in space-time. But that's irrelevant.
Which was not verified through Cavendish, but like you said, that's irrelevant.
Yeah. There's other experiments that show that.
Well, the Cavendish experiment showed that there was some kind of attraction between these masses, and me and MC Toon touched bases on this topic as well. Like I explained to him, Newton's law of gravitation and that equation that you described is an inverse square law. It's just like Coulomb's law. Now,
it's nothing like Coulomb's law.
Well, it's very similar.
But the problem is with Coulomb's law is that Coulomb's law describes an attractive and repulsive force. It's an attractive and repulsive force that equation describes. Whereas Newton's equation only describes an attractive force.
Which is the problem.
Also, there's the fact that Coulomb actually came up with that equation after Newton died. So Newton came up with it first.
Awesome, dude. Newton was a fucking genius. I don't take any credit away from a man who came up with these type of mathematical equations. I'm not saying that Newton wasn't
fucking spent the end of his life just counting money.
What I'm telling you is that if that statement is true and that those two objects in the Cavendish experiment had some type of physical attraction to each other, then we go back to the standard model. It has to be some kind of force-carrying particle that causes that attraction.
That's the thing. There's an important word there, is apparent, all right? There is an apparent attraction there. We can see there's an acceleration, so we can calculate that there's a force, all right? But that is something that I refer to as an emergent force, right? That attraction that we see, that force of attraction is the result of something else. And it's the result of, as Einstein said, uneven distribution of mass warping space-time. Okay, so the easiest way to think about things is that everything travels in a straight line, all right? But the space that is traveling through gets warped, changing the straight line path. And that was kind of what you touched on about with space being flat. Space isn't really flat. That's a simple way of if you were to try and describe space as a 2D bit of paper to visualize the expansion, it can be visualized as flat. But space isn't flat in that sense. Space is very much three-dimensional, but you can visualize the expansion in a 2D plane, which can be described as space being flat.
So, and trust me, when we say flat, we don't mean flat in a two-dimensional sense. Any scientist or any professor that you talk to in the subject will tell you, for the most part, from our perspective, space is flat. Space is only curved due to interference by masses, due to its interaction by masses. Mass tells space how to curve. Space tells mass how to move. I mean,
you're absolutely right. Yes,
very simple statement. And we do know that Newton's equations and also Einstein's field equations doesn't work throughout the galaxy. It may work.
Well, here's the thing.
When we're using two bodies. So I mean, but when we go further out into spiral galaxies and things like that, all of these physics fall apart. So what we got to understand, what you guys should be telling the flat earthers is that, dude, nobody knows about this unknown force that is in the universe. Nobody can say
trust me, we tried. Here's the thing though, right? Newton works exactly on a local level. We can use it in our solar system to calculate pretty much anything. Newton and Kepler together can pretty much describe all the motion in our solar system. But you're right, when you go further out...
They can't put it all together. Even with our solar system.
No, in our solar...
laws of motion.
You're wrong there, and that is kind of a flat Earth misconception. We can model all the bodies in our solar system, and we have done quite easily.
I've never heard a flat Earth touch bases on orbits and stuff like that. This is from my listening at the different debates between scientists. Like if you go on YouTube, listen at the Stanford University debates. I'm not talking about anybody who they don't give a shit what the shape of the Earth is. They're simply debating mathematics and laws of motions and gravity and things of this nature.
The thing is, so Newton, it perfectly works in a solar system. You go further out, it becomes less and less accurate. You can use Einstein, but even as you get further out, then it becomes less and less accurate. And that's why we've got the placeholder right now of dark energy, dark matter, because we don't really understand what's causing the expansion of the universe.
So let me stop you.
Wait, please. Let me finish my point here.
My bad.
But the thing is, none of that really matters, because we don't need to know about all of that to understand how gravity works for us on Earth. We don't need to think about why it doesn't exactly calculate the spirals of galaxies and things like that. it's really irrelevant. What we can do on Earth is experimentally verify that gravity is a thing that exists, and that we can scientifically demonstrate it to be a fact. And we can do that with, experiments for Newton and for Einstein, without having to talk about why it doesn't account for the spirals of galaxies in the distance. Science is an ever evolving thing that is trying to explain our entire existence, but we don't need to go, oh, well, it doesn't explain that, so let's all of a sudden start talking about M theory and string theory and particle physics. It's not relevant to know that we understand how gravity works. We understand how gravity works so well that we can use it to find minerals in the ground. There's satellites up there that literally detect gravitational fluctuations from different densities in the ground to get expensive minerals. There's someone that I personally know that's paid a lot of money to do specifically that. And we couldn't do that without knowing that gravity exists and how to experimentally verify that. When you get your phone, right, and you turn it sideways like that, and the image changes, that happens because of gravity. Nothing to do with density could do that. It's because gravity is attracting the silicon like comb inside and making it connect, so that when you turn it that way, it knows to turn the screen. And that's because of our understanding of how gravity works on a local level. It really, really isn't important that we can match quantum mechanics and general relativity or special relativity. It's really not important that gravity isn't part of the standard model of physics. None of that really, really matters for us understanding here on Earth that gravity is 100% a thing that exists and can be experimentally verified.
Yeah, it can. I don't know, man. Like I said, I got big problems with your gravitational theories, because no one actually knows what this gravity is. No one, and in order to be able to describe it, just like I told you that space has cardinal directions. That's one of the first bases of our conversation. You said, dude, that's something that's baseless and you can't prove. And it's the same thing with your gravity. Gravity is what we know of now. We know that there's something that makes us go towards my direction, my cardinal direction of down. But without having a cause of that, then
the cause of that is gravity. Totally and we can show that it's not just down that it attracts. Like that's what Cavendish is so great for, right? It shows that there's not just a cardinal direction of down. It shows that attraction happens on a horizontal level as well. And that doesn't make sense if there's just a cardinal direction of down with an acceleration of 8 meters per second squared. There would be no reason for there being...
We don't know what caused that attraction. The problem is
gravity.
We do
We do know what causes that attraction. We know that mass has caused space-time to bend. Why did that happen? Who fucking knows? But we can show that mass has caused space-time to bend, causing the phenomenon that we call gravity. The actual knowing why that happens, knowing if there's a carrier particle for gravity, none of that is really important to understanding that gravity is absolutely a real thing that exists.
Very important, and it's kind of a cop-out to say that something's not important, because when we look at the Cavendish experiment, the first thing that I do in my mind is visualize those balls or whatever he uses being planets, all right? So let's just say the sun is one of those objects in the Cavendish experiment, and the Earth is the second object. These objects have an attraction toward each other. The force of the attraction between the sun and the Earth is what? 10 times 22 to the 90-something power of force in newtons. With that much force being exerted between each other, the sun in itself should pull the moon into its gravitational space, because the force of it, the pull of the sun should be much stronger on the moon versus the pull of the Earth.
Wait, are you saying that the moon should be pulled away from Earth towards the sun?
And not only that,
let me tell you quickly why that's wrong. Is because the moon and Earth together are one system, all right? The moon and Earth together are one gravitational system, and it's that gravitational system itself that is orbiting the sun.
Exactly. That's what I said earlier.
The same gravitational influence that the moon's under, we're under.
Well, that's what I was trying to tell you at first when we talk about the laws governing orbiting bodies. Is we can make this the Earth and the Moon are one body system. That's the only way that the math works. Because if we separate the Moon from the Earth and use it as a three-body system, it doesn't work. The only way that the math works, and I've tried this myself, the only way it works is if we count the Moon and the Earth as one system.
Because that's how it is.
But that's not true, because the moon has its own physical attraction because it is a body with mass as well.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's that. Okay, so the moon's got its own mass that is attracting the Earth and everything, and the Earth has its own mass, but those masses together are one gravitational well that is orbiting the sun, and then within that, it's got its own system. Sorry.
That's how we had to do it to make the math work. Because
well, no, that's just how it is. That's how gravity works. You have gravitational wells orbiting other gravitational wells, and the fact is that you have to count the mass of the Earth and the Moon together, creating one gravitational well that is orbiting the sun. But within that gravitational well, there's then its own attractions going on. But that doesn't change the fact that the Moon and Earth system is one gravitational well that's orbiting the sun, with a barycenter about I think it's 50,000 miles off the surface of the Earth is the barycenter of the Earth-Moon system, and that's the center of gravity that is orbiting the sun. But then, like I said, within that Earth-Moon system, there's own gravitational interactions going on because all mass attracts all mass in the universe. Like my phone here is also attracting the sun. My phone here is attracting you because all mass in the universe attracts all other mass, but it just depends on how big that mass is.
Like I said, man, that's something that's, man, beyond most people's reach of understanding. When you come at me, the Earth and the Moon has to be separate systems because of the fact that the Moon orbits the Earth. I understand that it orbits the Earth within the Earth's own gravity well. All right, but why wouldn't the sun pull it out of that gravity well? We know that that there's a direct relation between masses and mass, so that if the mass of the Earth changed, then its orbit would change. Am I correct?
Both the Moon and the Earth have a tangential velocity going around the sun. So let me explain. So for the Moon to start falling into the sun, what would have to happen would there would have to be a force applied to the Moon to stop it orbiting the sun. All right, it's already orbiting the sun. There's nothing in space to stop it orbiting the sun. It's already going fast enough that the free fall towards the sun, and it's missing the sun. So there's no reason why the Moon would start drifting towards the sun. Unless there was a force that physically stopped the Moon in its tangential velocity around the sun. It's already in its orbit next to us. And we're now one system. So there's no reason why you would have to have a physical force.
We cannot recreate. This is something that we cannot recreate. This is something that cannot be verified through experiment.
Well, no, actually, the Cavendish Experiment verified that. That's what the Cavendish Experiment verifies, is that gravity works by mass attracting mass. And also, so we know that orbits work because every single time we put a rocket in space, that is doing an experiment demonstrating our knowledge of orbital mechanics.
If Cavendish Experiment proved that, then at that scale, we should be able to make one item orbit another item.
No, that's a straw man. We can't do that, and especially not on Earth, because anything we try to do that with on Earth will be pulled towards the Earth because the Earth's the biggest thing here. If we were in space, in free space with nothing around us, and we had something really, really big and something really, really small, maybe we could create a successful orbit. But it would have to be mass proportional to the mass and inversely proportional to the distance between them. And that means that you have to have an extremely large mass with something a lot smaller for that to happen. But like I said, anything that we try to do that with on Earth isn't going to work because it's already being attracted to Earth.
We are within Earth space.
Yeah.
So that would be out of the question because we are within Earth space. And it's the same thing with the Cavendish experiment. The attraction between these items should be more towards the Earth than towards each other. Now,
And
like
they
I
are.
said,
That's
I
the
don't
thing.
know
That's why the Cavendish experiment is great, because the balls on the edge of the balance, the balls that are moved towards that, they're all under the attraction of the Earth. So it's all got that acceleration downwards on equally, which means you can test in the horizontal direction because it's already being pulled down. The balls, the balance beam, everything, it's all being pulled down, which means that it's equal and cancelled out. So you can test left to right instead.
but there's no source of that force that you're testing in between these things.
There is
no
gravity.
source for your gravity in that in that aspect. If we saw,
Yeah, there is the mass of those balls. The fact that you move the balls closer together increases the attraction. That's the R over R squared. So when in the Cavendish experiment, right? In the Cavendish experiment, when you got this bar hanging with the balls on either end, okay, and then you move a bigger ball close to it, and it twists the bar, showing you that as you move the one ball closer to the end, it's made a stronger attraction and makes the torsion bar move. And that movement of the torsion bar, they've got a string holding it up, and you measure the twist on the string, and that's what you measure the attraction as. And that's how we show that there's an attraction not just up and down, but left and right as well.
Well, we can take that same experiment and use, let's say, a sheet of paper, something that can conduct a lot of electricity. And we put that we replace Cavendish's object with a sheet of paper. When I walk in the room, that sheet of paper is going to go towards me the closer I get to it, because of our attraction to each other electrically. All right. Now, and my point for saying that is not to discredit what you just said. My point for saying that is when that attraction occurs between me and that sheet of paper, there is a force, there is a particle, an elementary particle that is responsible for that attraction or repulsion. All right. And that elementary particle could be an electron, proton, or whatever. But there is a particle, a force-carrying particle, that is responsible for the attraction between me and the sheet of paper. When we come to the Cavendish experiment, you're 100% right. But what is the particle? What is the source of that attraction? It's something that we don't know. Therefore, it's something that's unmeasurable. We
now know that thanks to Einstein's theory and things like the Eddington experiment in 1919, that the cause of that attraction is warping of space-time. That's what the cause of the attraction is. Space-time warps, and that to us makes things appear to have an attraction based on how much the space-time is warped.
So the warping of space-time would also have to be caused by a force carrier, and that's why the standard model is incomplete. I'm a big advocate of the string theory.
Again, the standard model is irrelevant to gravity because particle physics is, so the force of gravity on particles would be so minute, and particle physics that deals with like the strong electromagnetic forces and the carrier particles between them. But particle physics deals with individual particles, and because the mass of an individual particle is so minute that gravity is practically negligible when doing all the calculations, you really don't need to include it.
No, but you do. In order to get a theory, an accurate theory of everything,
we don't have one yet. We don't have one yet because when you try, the thing is, that's not a problem. It's not a problem that we don't have a theory of everything. It actually really doesn't matter because we can still accurately make predictions with our knowledge of gravity. Right? Gravity. The thing is, right? It's very important. Gravity exists. There literally is no denying that gravity is a fundamental force in the universe that exists. There's so many experiments that show it. Cavendish, Schehelian, Eddington in 1919, Pounder-Beck, all the LIGO experiments. There's so many experiments that are,
like I said,
exist, and there's industries. There's industries exist. Like I was talking about earlier, the mineral deposit stuff. Right? There's industries that exist because we know that gravity is real. If gravity isn't real, then you couldn't detect minerals using gravity. You have to explain how we literally have industries based around using gravity to detect minerals.
It's something that they've programmed because there's no source of your gravity, just like I was trying to explain to
Space,
you. That's why
space-time warping is the source of it. And the thing is, you can't program. Right, hold on. You can't program a satellite to pick up something without a reason. You know, it's literally a satellite that's looking at the ground and can detect differences in density that causes a higher or lower gravity. And there's like a spring-loaded, sensor with the stretches or compresses based on the amount of gravitational attraction. So, you know, we're using our knowledge and, you know, foundational knowledge that gravity exists to actually detect physically a real thing that an entire industry is based around. You know, you have to explain how this industry works.
I don't know much about that, and I'm not one of them guys who's going to try to refute things that I don't know about. So I mean, when you got me on that mineral gravity finding mineral detector.
Would you like me to bring on the guy that wrote the code that analyzes the satellite data?
Oh no, you ain't got to do that, brother.
He's in the chat. He's in the chat right now. He's a PhD geophysicist called PhD Tony, and he actually wrote the code that analyzes the satellite data.
He's probably a very, very intelligent guy.
Oh, he
who
is.
has achieved the feat that 95, 96% of the people in the world cannot achieve. So his ideas and his translations of that, he can't expect the normal public to just jump on board with. What's going to happen is we live our life based on the breakthroughs and things that come from these kind of experiments. And like I said before, my biggest problem with gravity is, just like I said, you don't want to admit it, but there's a reason why we looking to find the sources of quantum gravity. There's a reason why theoretically we believe that there's a graviton out there that can be a force carrier for this force that you're talking about. When you're talking to me, my definition of gravity is simply the space that we live in. We live in 3 spatial dimensions, 1 time dimension. All right. And for me, gravity is simply the spatial dimension that we live in, and it has cardinal directions. I do believe that there's a source for everything, and that the reason why we have feet at our bottom and the head at our top is because this was designed that way. Humans are not designed for our blood to rush to our head. We are designed in a perfect system where our feet are at the ground and our head are at the top, which means that our feet represent down and our heads represent up. And all animals on Earth pretty much have that same type of thing going on. Now, there could be a consequence of evolution or whatever, but I don't believe that we are a cosmic concoction that just happened off of chance. I don't think that we are a chance group of people in the universe. We were designed.
I mean, getting into philosophy is another debate.
Right.
We can certainly have that another time. We've been going for about 2 hours, and I want to quickly get to Q&A, but I did want to ask one question of you first. How do seeds know which way to grow?
How do seeds know which way to grow?
Yeah.
They simply grow up. It's a cardinal direction.
How do they know which way's up?
They're going to grow towards the sun.
How do they know where the sun is? They're underground.
I guess it's programmed within their genetics.
How does it know? Because you can plant a seed any which way and it will still, roots go down, leaves go up. How does it know?
Because it's designed the same way that your body knows to create your feet at the bottom and your head at the top. That baby can be formed in any position inside the woman's womb and still end up with his feet. His feet are never going to replace his head biologically. And so that's the way we're saying.
The way it knows is by something called geotropy, gravitropic. There is little bits in the seed that can literally detect the acceleration of gravity. And they've tested this by putting seeds in a centrifuge, right? And having them grow sideways because of the artificial gravity created from the centrifuge spinning. They can even do it so that they're upside down. And whichever way the acceleration is detected by the seed decides which way the shoots go and the roots go. And it's always going to be, against the acceleration that's coming down. So that seed has to know. And it knows because of gravity.
Well, I could take the same thing and let's say screw the plant, let's take a human. We take a human and we wrap him in a centrifuge.
I'm not allowed to take humans. I got told off for that.
Huh?
I'm not allowed to take any more humans. I got told off for that.
Well, we take them and we put them inside a centrifuge, a pregnant woman, and we spin them. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, definitely can't take pregnant women. I'm definitely not allowed to take pregnant women. I got, you know.
Well, we're gonna experiment on this. We're gonna spin that centrifuge around very fast, and I can bet you that the baby will be deformed. It's going to grow a little bit different. It's because you're manipulating the environment that the seed in. So when we think of the roots, roots of that seed is going to be just like the feet of you. Just going to be like your
Wendell,
feet.
are you telling me I should kidnap a woman for her entire gestation period, put her in a centrifuge? That doesn't sound good. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. I can't. I like science, but it's a bit too far for me.
so we can do it in our head. We can visualize it in our head. But we got to look at the seed. I mean the roots of that seed as being like your feet. We got to look at the tops of that seed as being like your head. It knows which way to grow. It's not going to grow
because of the acceleration of gravity. That's why it knows.
I mean, I don't know, man.
Look up geotropy, honestly. Right.
Trust me, I've heard of that. Yeah, I've heard of that. It doesn't make much sense to me. Hey.
Right. I'm gonna go through the super chats now. Some of them might be mean towards you.
5 minutes left. I gotta get out of here in a second.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll tell you what then. If you've only got 5 minutes left, would you like some final words before you go?
I just want to say, man, you know, I really feel like my problem with a lot of the globe earth is the reason why I even joined that debate on Facebook is because there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of false knowledge that these people put out. And I only attack these people when I feel like the knowledge is wrong. It's like something like gravity. Most of you guys should get on there and say, hey, you guys are right about gravity. You should get on there and say, hey, as far as your relationship and your size to the earth is flat. Space and your relationship to space has a lot to do with how we perceive the space that we're in. If we were small as a electron or elementary particle, the shape of the earth might be even more different for us, might be even more dramatic. We don't know how our shape and where we're at in our dimensions affect our view. All right. And we know that, I know you're not an advocate of string theory. I am. And I feel there's plenty different types of string theories. But in order to tie all of these things together, everything has to have a source and a cause. And within these 11 dimensions that we exist within, the shape of space is altered depending on your relationship to the space that you're in. So for us as humans, being the size that we are, the earth is going to always be flat. There's not much ways that we can test it. And when someone tells us that, hey, the earth is spinning, for us, the earth is not spinning, it's relative. And when someone says, hey, we're orbiting around the sun, for us, that's relative. The sun is orbiting around us. All of those things are relative, and they can be mathematically mapped out in both ways. There's certain things that we're going to always have problems with. If the sun, if the whole solar system is hurling through space at, 10,000 miles per hour or whatever, in our minds, even though it may not be true, in our minds, when a rocket leaves Earth's atmosphere, Earth should be hurling away from it at 10,000 miles per hour or whatnot. And there's science explanation for that as well. You're still contained within the solar system. So in order for you to experience that speed, that speed of movement, you would have to be outside of the solar system. Makes no sense because you have never been outside of our solar system to gauge that speed for yourself. There's a lot of fallacies within the globe Earth theory. And I think that if we ever really want to have a decent intellectual and entertaining conversation, we got to stop fighting each other and let's really have an entertaining conversation. Of course, I hope you got tough skin and we can fight and make little jokes every now and then. But for the most part, man, it's just a bunch of riffraff. And I accept that people believe that the earth is flat.
So I appreciate you coming on, Wendell. I notice a lot of people are disappointed that we haven't been shouting at each other and anything. So please don't take this to heart. But fuck you, you fucking idiot. You're a fucking knob. You don't know anything. Screw you. Fuck you. Come on. What you got, you fucking prick? There we go. Happy guys.
Right.
A bit of a dumpster fire. Wendell, I do appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, I think you're wrong. But as talking to flat earthers go, it's been a genuinely pleasant conversation, and there's not many of flat earthers that I can actually have genuinely pleasant conversations with.
When I find some more evidence, I'm gonna get back with you and fight you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I would very much like to see you talk to PhD Tony, who is obviously an expert in gravity. He might be able to answer some questions better than I can, because like I said, I'm only a lowly bachelor's degree, whereas Tony is a real person with a PhD. But thank you very much for taking your time today, and I'm sure we will talk again.
All right, peace out, Craig, and fuck
Peace
you
out.
back.
Take it easy. Wow, he's not too bad, is he? Wrong, ignorant, but not too bad as they go. All of you awesome people, thank you very much. I've had, it says, 1,312 views already. I think we peaked out at 600 watching at once live, which is amazing. I've had 849 votes on the poll. If you haven't voted on the poll, it's just in the chat section. While I'm reading these super chats, anyone who hasn't voted, please vote. Currently, the votes are, is the Earth flat? We got 4%. Is the Earth? 4% say flat. 39% say globe. 57% say the Earth is fucked. That is definitely my vote. I'm back, guys. I'm back full time again. I've had a terrible few weeks, even maybe a couple of months of bad health, mental health issues, physical problems, and then a horrible fucking norovirus. But I'm back. I've got 2 videos in production. One's going to be out tomorrow, and then another one on the weekend. I've got another debate on Friday, and the debate on Friday is going to be a dumpster fire. MC Toon's in the chat, and MC Toon, I would like you to describe Tony Noam in 3 words for me, please. Describe Tony, that's going to be debating me on Friday, in 3 words for everybody, so they know what kind of dumpster fire to expect. Thank you very much, MC Toon. As always, I massively appreciate all the support you guys have given me. So many super chats, I'm going to read them in a sec. If you're not able to support the channel financially, one of the best ways to help me is to share what I do on Facebook and Twitter. It really helps my reach. There does seem to be a new feature for members where you can leave a message. I'm not sure if that means you've upgraded or how it works. Please, one of the members let me, but I did see that members were leaving messages that are appearing alongside the super chats. So Alison for $2 says gravity. Oh, you mean dropity? Yeah, I'll never forget that fucking allegedly Dave illustration. Well, the problem with the space-time demonstration is there's nothing pulling it down. I'm going to call that dropity. Dave, go away and drink your own piss. Tim Tully, $5. Somebody put magnesium into the dumpster. Burns so bright. Wait till Friday. I'm still waiting, MC Toon. Oh yeah, it seems that members can basically do a free super chat, which is awesome. Yeah, MC Toon, if you're there, 3 words to describe Tony that I will be debating on Friday. Pivot Croy for €5 says, great, another Flerf that measures the rotational velocity of their power tools in miles per hour rather than RPM. Lol. Yeah, I know. I didn't even touch on the fact that you said the Earth's spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. They just don't get it, do they? Mark Verschel, $4.99 says, so how does the vomit comet work? Does the air suddenly become more dense, or do the people suddenly become less dense? Unfortunately, flat earthers have all become more dense. Marty Mad Scientist, $5 Canadian says, have you ever been to sea, Billy? No, but I've been blown ashore. Oh, by the way, how's my new mic doing? Is the voice good? I think I'm quite impressed with it. Baron Von G 499 says that's that. Those 2 boats is one of my favourite evidence. Guess what? Flatties don't care about evidence. It's CGI. Yeah. What I showed clearly demonstrated that you can't zoom things back in, and it's not just perspective. I bet Gary Webenenga said something stupid in there, didn't he? Nature for $5 says he seems like a nice dude and worthy of patience. Save him, fight. Maybe. I think PhD Tony could help me there. Lord Luminous Pooh, $5 says, when my therapist suggested to me I was delusional, I almost fell off my unicorn. Yeah, when I speak to my therapist and leave, as soon as I leave, he calls his own therapist. Connell Silverfer, who's been a member for 8 months, thank you very much, says you should mention Bob's mechanical gyroscope and how it confirmed what his ring laser gyroscope already showed and how Bob refused to pay for it. Yeah, I'm actually going to be covering the Stephen P thing in a video. It's about 5 videos down the line, so maybe like a year later. I don't know. Pivot Croy, €5. Gotta love how he dodges questions like Mike Tyson dodges punches when he knows he can't explain it with his model. Ray D for $10 says, good to see you back. Fight the flat earth, aka the dumbest conspiracy out there, and it has serious competition. Yeah, I still think that flat earthers are the dumbest people on the fucking planet. Never stop being stupid, guys. I love it. Folker Persia Pakashi, $5 says, Flerf, your inability to understand reference frames in relation to geostationary satellites doesn't disprove the globe. No, it absolutely doesn't. I may have said earlier that geostationary isn't an orbit. I didn't mean that. Obviously, it is an orbit. I meant it's not going around the Earth, like separately to the Earth's rotation. Folker Persia Pakashi, $5 says, the average person doesn't understand how planes fly. Therefore, by your logic, aircraft do not exist because most people don't understand them. Yeah, big metal birds in the sky, man. It's fucking crazy shit. Fogger Persia Pakashi, who's been a member for 5 months, thank you very much. Hey Flerf, we destroyed our own ships in nuclear tests. Governments destroy old tech all the time. Preservation costs a lot of money. See USS Texas. Lord Luminous Pooh for $5 says, the shuttle was an analog system with no microchips. The smaller the chip, the more likely to get messed up by radiation. Technology got better, but delicate. Yeah, that's why... all the computer components on board the Mars rovers are like from the late 90s because they've got transistors with bits far enough apart that solar radiation doesn't damage them. Fogger Pesha Pakashi, $2. Flerf, look up Apollo 1. Apollo wasn't that safe. No, Apollo was not fucking safe. I would have not got into one of those things. Masturbator has been a member for 19 months. Fuck me. Wouldn't let me send off Nathan emojis. Nathan sucks. Yeah. Nathan's living in a tent on a cannabis farm at the moment. It's fucking hilarious. And he keeps getting annoyed by gophers poking up the bottom of his tent. I'm paying those gophers so much money. Lord Luminous Pooh for $5 says, pineapple goes on pizza like tongues go in bums. Ugh. Not everyone likes it, but those who do are a bit more sophisticated. Baron Von G 499 says, Craig, you're wrong about that one. NASA's going off planet for the regular Joe. It's not just for science, it's also to inspire the regular Joe. Well, yeah, they don't really care what the regular Joe thinks, though. They just do what the government tells them, right? Fogger Persha Pakashi, Flerf, by your logic, the moon should be molten. Yeah, I think he was complaining that it's not. Baron Von G499 says, I had to do this one, FTFE. Ask if he understands the difference between temperature and heat transfer. He was close. Closer than a lot of flat earthers, I'll give him that. Fogger Persha Pakashi, $5. NASA gave us GPS, planetary detection, advanced medicine, air accident investigation, jaws of life, and hope for the future. Flat earthers give nothing. Headaches? Flat earthers give headaches? Connell Silverfur, $5. Simple question for the Flerf. If flat earth is true, big assumption, can you name one useful way it would advance our understanding of the world? No. Don't be silly. Better charge $5 New Zealand. Put a third point on that flat map of yours and it starts to not work between 2 points. Yes, you can do it flat. And then Bella Charge, who's been a member for 21 months. Fuck me. New feature for members. Yes, members can give free super chats. Stephen York, $7.99. Wi-Fi is useful to you and me, but the only reason it exists is due to an accidental discovery made by the CSIRO doing research into black holes. Well, thank fuck for Wi-Fi. Connell Silverfur for $5. Correct me if I'm wrong on my understanding of Einstein versus Newton. Newton observed gravity while Einstein gave us more precise details regarding it. Exactly right. Anthony Riley, you child predator, pay attention. Fogger Persha Pakashi, $5. To quote Gordon Freeman, PhD, string theorists are a bunch of cultists. Freeman's Mind series is an absolute comedic masterpiece on YouTube. I recommend it. Yeah, I fucking agreed. Kirk B, $5. I know nothing, so you know nothing. That's what I hear. Eon Dust, $5. I think FTFE is secretly a masochist. Why else would he do this to himself? Because I was evil in a past life and this is my penance. Then we've got Droopy Wiener, says, ooh, a free one. Thank you very much. Stringer News 1, been a member for 19 months. Hi, Colonel Greg. Google Pay is broken, so all I have is this free super chat. Blah, 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 blah. Thank you very much, buddy. Member for 19 months. Rachel O'Daniels, member for 21 months. Says, sweet, had to try this. Great to see you, FTFE. It's even greater to see you, Rachel, and all you awesome people watching. Stellarian Castle, member for 10 months, says, Temba, his arms wide. Temba, his arms wide indeed. Quitty's the Sprinkler. You know, I have to keep reminding myself that Star Trek Lower Decks is canon. I fucking love it. Quitty's a Sprinkler, member for 21 months. Titty Sprinkles, that is all. That's all I need. Alan H, member for 17 months. Great to have you back, FTFE. Thank you very much. Great to be back. Eon Dust, member for 2 months, says, hey, I'm going to use this all to tell you you're sexy. I know. Just look at this. You love it. Lord of Luminous Poo, that was the least sexy thing anyone's ever done. Lord of Luminous Poo for $2 says, as long as I can get one good laugh out of fight. Always, thank you very much. And Waikika Moo Cow's been member for 7 months, says, will Riley be passed around as currency in jail? I don't know, I wouldn't want to touch that with someone else's barge pole. Alright, final votes. If you haven't voted, I'll give you 10 seconds to vote, and then I'm going to shut the vote down. 10, 9, 8, pay attention, flat earthers. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A couple of seconds to catch up. And we've got, there we go, 870 votes.